We must, of course, start the show by acknowledging the loss of a legend, as I'm sure you've heard by now. Earlier this week, basketball legend Anna Venn passed away. She was a champion on all levels as a player and as a coach, and also just as a human being. She was of great inspiration to many people, both in the game of basketball and just in life in general. Greetings and welcome to the Fan Perspective. I'm your host Nathan Nile, and this is WNBA Weekly, the show where every Monday I stand in front of this camera and I talk about things that have happened recently in the association and things I'm looking forward to in the upcoming week. And this has been an exciting week full of a lot of turnover as the standings have gotten reshuffled yet again. Right now you've got the LA Sparks on a 4-game winning streak and the Phoenix Mercury on an 8-game winning streak. They are now sitting at 1-2. And then you've got Seattle rounding out the top 3. No surprise, the West is dominating this year as usual. And then you've got the Connecticut Sun and the Washington Mystics, 2 teams. They were the last teams to stay undefeated this year. But they both had a couple of rough stretches. Connecticut, Alyssa Thomas goes down in an epic comeback attempt against Washington. They were down by 30 points. They managed to tie the game, and they had a legitimate chance of winning. But Alyssa Thomas goes down. They're not able to finish. And then they just struggle after that. They've now lost 3 games in a row, 4 of their last 5. And suddenly they come back down to earth a little. They look normal, and they're right in the middle of the pack once again. Speaking of the middle of the pack, you've got a couple of teams like the Wings and the Dream. And right now it feels like it's hard to judge those 2 teams because they'll lose games against teams that they should beat, and they'll win games against teams that I'd expect them to lose to. They've stayed right around 500 the whole time. I kind of expected this a little bit from Dallas. This is basically the same team that they were last year, with the biggest difference being the addition of Cam Beige. I didn't think it would still be so up and down. I thought it would trend more upwards, but they are in a tough league. Atlanta, however, I've seen Angel McCoughtry score 30 points in a game by herself, yet they're averaging in the 60s every single game. That's a little shocking for me. But right now, the defense is the only reason that they're in most of the games that they play. Because, once again, they're only scoring 60 points a game. So they can only win when they're able to hold their opponents into the 60s as well. The Aces had a tough week, 4 games, including 3 out of 4 on the road, and they actually managed to win 2 of them. I guess that's the youth showing, because first they have an overtime win in Indiana, then they go on the road the very next night and manage to win that game as well. In that overtime game, you probably heard by now, A'ja Wilson, 35 points, 13 rebounds, 3 blocks. You know who else had numbers like that as a rookie? Candace Parker. She won MVP. I doubt A'ja Wilson's going to get MVP just because, I don't expect Vegas to have a winning record at any point in this season. It's hard for me to believe they'll be in the playoffs, and I don't think anyone wants to give the MVP award to a player on a team with a losing record sitting in the bottom of the standings. That being said, if you just judge her on her personal performance alone, she more than deserves it. Let's be honest. A'ja Wilson really seems like a once-in-a-generation type of player. I mean, she's doing things like this as a rookie, before she even plays 10 games. She just steps on the court and just starts taking control of this franchise. Imagine what she's going to be like in 3 to 5 years once she really starts getting it together and she understands all of the mental aspects of the game and her body's in the best shape it can possibly be. How scary good can this woman be? Speaking of a lot of potential upside, the Aces and Fever, they both struggled this year, but the Fever, they finally get their first win. They destroyed Atlanta. It was a huge margin of victory after a very close loss to them just the game before. Both of those teams, Indiana and Las Vegas, the talent level is there. They are struggling right now because they're in a league loaded with talent. Talent's not enough to win. But there's a lot of young, talented players that, like right now, you look at someone like Kayla McBride, especially A'ja Wilson, maybe Kelsey Plum, and you look at someone like Victoria Vivians and definitely Kelsey Mitchell. These could be the faces of their franchise for like the next 10 years. The league is just going to continue to keep getting more and more interesting. One team that does seem to be on the downside, Minnesota. They managed to get a win. However, that was a win against a Liberty team that lost to the Aces, and two of their 3 wins are against the Fever. So it's not like the Liberty are that strong of a team. It was a good win, but let's not go head over heels like, oh, the Lynx are completely fixed right now. Let's not go there yet. If the Lynx can start getting some quality wins over some quality teams like the Mercury or the Sparks, then I'll start believing in them again. But for the moment, it's kind of hard to look at the Minnesota Lynx team and say, wow, that's a scary matchup. The talent is there, but right now you look at especially Augustus and Waylon, they virtually disappeared. Maya, her game is up and down, but that half of that is just the fact that they completely changed their offense to run entirely through Fouls, who has been consistently doing the work. But then the people around her aren't getting involved as much as they need to. So after all that excitement, here are your current standings. I just want to touch on a couple of notes. First of all, A'ja Wilson performing incredibly well. She had 198 points through her first 9 games of her career. The only people to score more, Cappie Pondexter and Simone Augustus. So that's elite company. And another thing of note, All-Star voting opens up Tuesday. So don't forget to get your votes in if you want your player represented. So now we move on to the games that are being played next week, and as always, I will tell you which ones are currently scheduled to air nationally. For the rest, check your local listings, or you can watch every single game on WNBA League Pass. And also, every time I tell you is Eastern Standard Time, please remember to adjust for your time zone. The first thing to remember is that there are only 3 days of action in the WNBA. On Tuesday, you've got 5 games being played. On Friday, you've got 6 games being played, every single team in action. And then on Sunday, you've got 6 games being played, every single team in action. On Tuesday, there is currently only 1 game scheduled to air, and that is the Aces at the Storm at 10 p.m. on Twitter. On Friday, 4 of the 6 games are actually going to be played on ESPN 2 and 3. And then on Sunday, you have a doubleheader on NBA TV, starting with the Storm at the Wings at 4 p.m. The team I'm definitely looking at the most this week, you got the Minnesota Lynx, because if they win all 3 of their games this week, they will be above 500 for the first time since May. The last time they had a winning record, they were 2-1. And since then, they've been 500 or under, or the rest of the way. But it's not an easy schedule. They have to win all 3 games. If they even lose 1, they'll finish the week 6 and 7. And right now, in all honesty, in the WNBA, there's no such thing as an easy schedule for any teams. Especially since one of their games is against the Mercury. That almost seems like a definite loss at this point in time. You've got a Wings team that is still figuring something out, but the talent is definitely there. They are dangerous. And you've got an Aces team that, they've been down more than they've been up, but they have managed to get some strong wins together, albeit for the most part against weaker teams. The Connecticut Sun are also playing 3 games this week, and they're in the middle of a 3-game losing streak, trying to get it turned around, get themselves righted. Alyssa Thomas did get hurt, and she might arguably be their most important player. However, the thing about this team that was supposed to be great about them is their depth. That you have 3 All-Stars from last year, a first overall pick returning in Chennai, and they seemed to be doing fairly well for themselves at first. And it's shocking for me to believe that losing Alyssa, as important as she is, would cause them to skid this much. The depth was one of the scariest things about Connecticut. that you basically got 5 players in the starting lineup who are capable of being all-stars, capable of leading the team in scoring. I think you've got like 7 different people on the team who average double-figure scoring. And their defense, it's been fairly decent most of the year, right? I don't think it's definitely not number 1, but it's been all right. And another team I'm going to be paying attention to for the exact same reason I'm paying attention to the Lynx is the Liberty, a team that, like the Lynx, was in the top 3 in the standings last year. Now they're on the fringe of the playoffs picture, fighting just to get in, fighting just to get above 500. And one of the games on their schedules is the Sparks. So you've got the number 1 seed, you've got the Atlanta team with the number 1 defense, you've got the Aces team, which you just lost to. Either way, it's going to be an interesting week because there are I think the Fever are the only exception here where they could go on a 3-game winning streak and they'd still probably be 12th. But other than them, any team that can get hot right now and put a winning streak together has a chance to climb up in the standings. And as we've seen already with the Mystics and the Sun, even the best teams in the league are capable of stumbling and falling. And so we'll see how long the Mercury can stay hot. We'll see how long the Sparks can stay hot. They've got some tough matchups ahead of them. Well, that's it for this episode. Tune in next week for another all-new edition of WNBA Weekly. And until then, this has been The Fan Perspective. I'm your host, Nathan Lyle. Have a great week.